Well, this is the ninth video in our home buying series. And in this video, we're going to be talking about negotiations and kind of specifically as it relates to dealing with a counter offer if you end up getting one of those. So when you write an offer on a home, it's possible that the seller may not like your offer, especially if you wrote below asking or wrote in some terms that maybe the seller wasn't a huge fan of. So what a counter offer is, the seller says, well, hey, I like the offer, but there's a few things that I want to change. That could be price, that could be terms, that could be closing date. There's a lot of different things that could be. And just as a quick aside, typically I like running offers in a way where we don't actually need to deal with counter offers. And I'll get into a little bit of how we can work that in just a little bit. But sometimes we do write an offer that can be very aggressive, and then we expect a seller to counter, or sometimes we don't expect the seller to counter and they do anyway. All right, so what happens? You write an offer, you get a counter back from the seller. What do? Well, the interesting thing about negotiations in real estate is that part of the negotiations has to do with you as the buyer, and the other part is me as the agent negotiating on your behalf. So really, it's like a team approach where we're working together with different negotiation techniques to get the result that we want. So what I'm going to be doing now is talking about what some of these techniques are, which ones are your responsibility as a buyer, and which ones I do as the real estate agent to make sure that you can get the result that you're looking for. Obviously, it's not always possible to get the result exactly the way you want it. There's both sides trying to negotiate for what they want. But by using these 6 negotiation tips, I find that buyers are typically able to get what they want. So the very first thing, and probably the most important thing, is for you as the buyer to express your needs clearly. I can't negotiate on your behalf if I don't know exactly what you want. So be very clear with me saying, hey, I want this, and I want this. And once I know that, and then I can go to bat for you and try to get those results for you. Sometimes people, especially if they're a first-time home buyer, may not know exactly what to ask for. So they say, I don't know what's normal. I don't know what I should even think about asking for. So in those cases, I'll give advice and just say, hey, I think based on this situation, here's what we should probably be shooting for. But ultimately, it's your decision as a buyer to say, hey, this is really what I want to shoot for. So once I know what you want as the buyer, the next step is for me to ask good questions to the other side. So this is often about trying to figure out what the seller's motivation is, what they are really wanting to get out of this. Sometimes it's price. Sometimes they want a repair inspection period to go very quickly and smoothly. Sometimes they just want to close quickly. There's a lot of different things that a seller could really want. So if we are only focused on price, for example, but they're less concerned about price and they really just want to be done with it and move on, there's certain ways that we can structure an offer to make it more attractive to them. So maybe you're paying less, but you're doing other things to ensure the offer is going to close, and they may like that even more than a higher priced offer. So the next part after asking good questions may seem obvious, but it's actually listening. So a lot of times we get into trouble by talking too much. Obviously, I have a YouTube channel and I'm used to talking a lot, but sometimes I have to learn when to shut up. It's really easy to get ourselves into trouble by talking too much. So what I've learned is that by not saying anything and listening, a lot of times the other side will divulge information to me, or they'll negotiate with themselves by me not doing anything. And the more that I listen, the more that they're able to share, and we can get greater context so we can structure any offer counter offers better. The next step after listening to what the seller really wants is to look for win-wins. Again, I was mentioning certain things that may not be a big deal to you, but to the seller may be something really important to them. So if both sides can be happy with the deal, then it can make the rest of the transaction go that much more smoothly. There's going to be later negotiations for repairs and perhaps appraisals and things like that. So if both sides are happy and willing to negotiate with each other, it makes the deal less likely to fall apart. I've seen times where clients can be a little bit too aggressive in what they're asking for. The other side feels like they're being taken advantage of. And sometimes when that happens, they find a way to weasel their way out of the contract and the deal can fall apart. So while it can be good to be somewhat aggressive and really advocate for what you want, you don't want to be so aggressive that the other side feels like they're being taken advantage of. Because ultimately, if the deal falls apart, then you didn't really get what you want anyway. The next tip I'll give is to keep your feelings out of it. I've seen people get so emotionally attached to an outcome or be really offended by what the other side is asking for that the whole deal has blown up because they become unwilling to do any negotiations because their feelings were hurt. And so one of the things I try really hard to do is explain this perspective from both sides, the buyer and the seller, and say, hey, here's really what this side is asking, here's why. The context can go a long way. I also do as much as I can to help people kind of walk through and navigate their feelings, but ultimately it's up to each individual to control their own emotions and be willing to stay in the game and not get too emotionally attached in the outcome. One quick aside about this is when you're not too attached to the outcome, it allows me to negotiate better on your behalf. And when you become really afraid of the deal not working out, sometimes you can quickly accept a bad deal instead of trying to do a little bit more negotiation to make it even better, perhaps even for both sides, but specifically for yourself. The next tip, which is being patient, kind of ties into that. Sometimes it can be really tempting to just accept a counter offer when it comes in because you want to quickly move through the process. Sometimes that's necessary if there's multiple offers on the table and someone counters you. If you counter back, they may go with another offer. But if that's not the situation, yours is the only offer, they counter back, sometimes it's worth being patient and saying, hey, let's write a couple more clauses in, counter back, and allowing time for both sides to come up with a solution that works for everyone. Part of my job as a real estate agent is to be able to discern when it's time to counter back and when it's time to move things forward. So this is something I work really closely together with my clients with to help us determine when it's time to move quickly or to be patient and wait for the best deal possible. Now, again, you don't always get what you want, and no amount of negotiating will guarantee that you'll get every single thing you're looking for. But by using the tips I mentioned in this video, you can really get a lot farther. And this is really just scratching the tip of the iceberg. When it comes to negotiation, there's so much more to it, but this is just to give you as a buyer an idea of what the process can look like. Well, I hope you found this video helpful. If you're looking for a more comprehensive guide, I've got that linked in the description. We put together a buyer guide that has all kinds of information from start to finish of the process of buying a home. We also have tons of other educational videos about real estate and Newberg. We're coming up with an investment series, so you can check out some of those videos if those are any topics that you'd be interested in. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.